Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to
Something else.
something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matara, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to something else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
And welcome to episode number 311 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes on this week's episode as we take a look at Mid-South Wrestling and World Class Championship Wrestling from July the 13th, 1985. My name is Aria, and joining me, as always, is, well, nobody. And it's okay, because this is episode 311. Shoddy fire burning on the dance floor. Whoa, I gotta cool her down. She will bring the roof to ground on the dance floor. Whoa. And now that I just ran off anybody who turned on this week's episode, thank you to everybody who YouTube broke for and you're unable to close this out here. Thank you all for listening. I am flying solo today, and I don't know for how long. Trey is going through some things. He asked me if he could go on a little bit of a hiatus. Of course, I'm not going to tell him no. And I don't want to make assumptions. I have known Trey long enough that I have a good idea what's going on. But we haven't discussed it, and he knows that if and when he's ready to talk about what's going on, I'm here for him. So sending nothing but love and positive thoughts his way. Despite the rumor I tried to start, he did not suddenly back out of the show because Shota Umino got a concussion and is out of the rest of the G1. And I believe Shota Umino was his choice to win the damn tournament. Perhaps this makes him a worse prognosticator than my friend Steph, who she used to have the absolute worst luck in fantasy football. Every year, her first round pick would get suspended, would get injured, or both. The one year she had the number one pick and took Adrian Peterson first in the draft. The very next day, Adrian Peterson got suspended for the entire year. He's either suspended for the entire year or injured for the entire year. I'm sure there's somebody up there, probably a Vikings fan, yelling, "Oh, that was the year this happened. That was the year that happened," for those listening. So anyway, it's going to be a wacky little format for the next few weeks for both this show and the Thursday show. I'm talking to some people to do some temporary fill-ins. Right now, it looks like Stevie J of the site formerly known as AngryMarks.com is going to be joining us on Thursdays when he can. I don't want to jinx it, but I do have somebody who has tentatively agreed to do one episode of this show next week. To help her out a little bit, I'm only going to make her watch Mid-South. I can't imagine, what would happen if I tried to make her watch World Class. Although who knows? Maybe she'd watch World Class and be like, "This is the greatest show I've ever seen. Can I watch more World Class?" I don't see that happening. But of course, with just me, I can't imagine the show's going to last 2 hours. Although I was thinking about this earlier, where usually, when Trey starts talking, that's when I press mute and, I take a drink or I eat a chicken nugget or sometimes do both. I will not be able to do that this week. Although I guess, I can do that while playing audio of the shows. Let me see here. Apparently, Brie Bella believes that Bryan Danielson is never going to wrestle again. And if I'm going to believe anybody, it's going to be, Brie Bella, of all people. And I'm being serious when I say that. I'm not being facetious, even though what it sounds. But anyway, let's dive into the show here. Mid-South from July 13th, 1985. You know what happens when you skip a week? You forget what show you're on, and you turn on the last week's show, and you go, man, this is remarkably similar to last week's show. So thankfully, I only made it 2 minutes into the July 6th show before I realized, uh-oh. And I decided to skip ahead to the right show, July 13th. So let's go to the intro with JR and Joel, who are going to tell us everything we're going to watch this week, kind of.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Mid-South Wrestling. Thanks very much for being with us here today on America's #1 wrestling television program. I'm Jim Ross, and along with Joel Watts, we'll be describing the action. You're going to see some of wrestling's top stars right here today on this program. You're going to see the Fantastics go against Hot Stuff, Eddie Gilbert and Tommy Pritchard, and a great tag team encounter. Brickhouse Brown and Mark Reagan will team up today as well. Plus, you'll see the Mid-South Tag Team Champions Ted DiBiase and Dr. Death. A lot of great tag team action. But, Joel, we've got 2 single matches that really need more explaining. It's really going to be great.
Well, last week, Hacksaw Jim Duggan was going to wrestle, but he didn't get the stipulations that he wanted. He wants to get Akbar in the ring, so Grizzly Smith has signed the match. Hacksaw Jim Duggan against the Zambui Express, a television main event right here on Mid-South. And add to that, Hacksaw Jim Duggan will get to Skandar Akbar if he could defeat Zambui. Akbar will be fair game. Also, last week we saw a new television champion, Dirty Dutch Mantell. He defeated the Snowman right here on Mid-South Television after the Nightmare pile drive the Snowman on the concrete floor. The Snowman apparently has a brain concussion. We don't know how long he's going to be out of wrestling with a brain concussion. Sometimes it's hard to tell.
That's exactly right, Joel. It's going to be quite a matchup today. It'll be Terry Taylor for the TV title against Dirty Dutch Mantell. Plus, ladies and gentlemen, the Brickhouse, Hacksaw Butch Reed is coming back to Mid-South. He'll be here in person next week, but right now, let's go back in time and look at this great video, Body Works, featuring Hacksaw Butch Reed.
Okay, so poor Brickhouse Brown, who, by the way, is on this show this week, and they're like, oh, the Brickhouse, Butch Reed, is coming back next week. Poor Brickhouse Brown doesn't even get to be the Brickhouse when he's the only Brickhouse on the show. So you heard them go over the matches, and I'm not going to spoil things for you yet here on this 41-year-old wrestling program, but Jim Ross and Joel Watts lied to us, and I will explain how they lied to us a little bit later on when we get to the end of the show. Now, before we get to the end of the show, I'm going to tell you what else they talked about happening at the beginning of the show, including Duggan versus the Zambui Express in a television main event, with the special stipulations that if Duggan wins, he gets to be with Akbar. And thankfully, Joel is just really bad at his job because he couldn't even explain that properly. Basically, if Duggan wins, he gets to have a match with Akbar in the ring. That was really hard for Joel to explain. We're told that Snowman has a brain concussion, which I'm told is worse than a regular concussion, and because of the brain concussion, the Snowman's not going to be here for a while. And by for a while, I mean ever. Ha ha ha. And I'm sure he's off to the land where wrestlers go to disappear, Kansas City. And then one day he's going to end up in Memphis where he pawns the USWA title for drugs, according to Randy Hales. Now, from here, because Butch Reed's coming back, we got to show you a Joel Watts music video, and this is the one that they aired a few months ago with Eric and Michael Watts in it, young Eric Watts. Hey, this is the only time all week Eric Watts is going to be on this podcast network, so I guess we had to get our one Eric Watts instance in every week. I should note that, by the way, that Georgie Watts was not in the video, which would have been really weird since I don't know when Eric and Georgie actually met. So it would have been really weird if she was in this video from 1985. Well, from here we go to the ring for our first match. It is the TV champion, Dutch Mantell, versus Terry Taylor, who's a bitch, a stooge, and a D-Gens. Boyd, on ring announcing, angrily points to the camera as he explained that this is a 15-minute time limit because it's for the TV title. Dutch again wore the short trunks and not the singlet, so his carpet was on full display. You know, the 2000s sure were weird. If you were a man in the 2000s who trimmed or outright shaved your excessive body hair, that made you metrosexual and possibly gay. And from there, it made me think about a new gimmick, metrosexual Dutch Mantel, where Dutch appears on an episode of Queer Eye for the Straight Guy and they trim up his body hair. I doubt Dutch would have willingly taken part in that. Dutch called to referee Randy Anderson that Taylor grabbed his hair. Joel did not believe that was true. Now, it's very possible that Taylor did not grab the top of Dutch's head, but Dutch has so much hair on his body that Terry could have, like, accidentally grabbed some chest hair, when he threw him off there. Taylor hit the 5-arm and went for the figure 4, but Dutch scurried to the ropes and out of the ring to break it up. Dutch used the roll-up with a handful of tights, but Terry kicked out. So Dutch grabbed Shoe Baby and poked Terry in the throat with it, and then won with the MX, which, for those of you who forget, it's his front suplex. All right, now we told you earlier about the big match coming up here today with Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Zambui Express. Well, we need to have some comments before this match by all the parties involved. First, let's go to Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
This is America. America, land of the free and home of the brave. And I'm one man that's sick and tired of these terrorists living in our country, and just because they got a big fat pocket, just because they got a lot of bread, they can buy their way out of anything. Well, not the way it goes in Mid-South. Because Mid-South has promised Hacksaw Jim Duggan, if I can beat him, if I can beat that big Zambui Express, Mohammed, whatever he calls himself, then they've gave me their word that I get Skandar Akbar. Skandar Akbar, the man that disfigured me for life, the man that almost blinded me for life, the man that cost my family, my country, my pride, all kinds of heartbreak. That's the man that I want, Skandar Akbar. And he comes out here and talks about, hey, being a big, proud, powerful man. Akbar, you're getting in way over your head. You better count on your hired help because you can't get it done.
Okay, so this is very much a 1980s wrestling promo that you could not repeat in 2026, where Duggan is just out here calling Akbar a terrorist. It's like you could like be vague about it at first, but like, oh, he's not talking about Akbar. He's just randomly talking about terrorists in this country with big fat pockets and bread. And then he mentions Akbar. What if Akbar has those big fat pockets because that's where he stores his bread in? And maybe that's the bread that he uses to feed his family. But as always, certain people, and pro wrestling is always fond of this, don't get the irony of proclaiming this the land of the free while openly yelling about holding back other people's rights. You gotta love it. And I'm not turning General Skandar Akbar into a babyface, but, hey, he's in this country. He deserves some rights. And being told that he cannot exercise his freedoms because he's not lily white, that's racist. Ladies and gentlemen,
You can't do that.
you can't withhold people's freedoms. During this promo where he's talking about terrorists, I was thinking about, remember AWA Super Clash 3? They did the lingerie battle royal, and the winner was a woman named the Terrorist. Whatever happened to her? If there's any terrorists out there, terrorist, if you're out there and you're listening to the show, and I can't imagine why you wouldn't be, send us an email, and maybe we'll get you on as a co-host one of these weeks when I'm waiting for Trey to come back from a sabbatical. So, terrorist, reach out to us. Oh, that's a sound drop where nothing bad could possibly come out of that one, huh? All right, so we heard from Duggan. Let's now hear from General Skandar Akbar.
Good reason that I should do anything, Duggan.
With my unlimited resources and my wealth, there are countless of these underprivileged countries. There are thousands of Kamalas. There are thousands of Zimbabwe Expresses just waiting to do my bidding, because that's what it's all about. So, Duggan, why? Why should I? Well, I can tell you this. Don't you ever get the idea that I can't handle my own affairs. I'm still a big, powerful man. I was North American champion for a long, long time in this area. Understand this, Duggan. I found an easier way, because all you Americans are getting soft and you're getting lazy. That's why the Kamalas, and that's why the Zimbabwe Expresses, and that's why, most of all, the General is now king of Mid-South. And that's why Bill Watts knows in his mind that he can't wipe the egg that I put on his face. And you, Duggan, why should I?
All right. I don't know what it says when he talks about how there are thousands of Kamalas and thousands of Zambui Expresses out there. But yeah, it's just it's hilarious. So, we had a Kamala 2. Wasn't it like Kamala Jr. or something? I guess there are hundreds of Kamalas. Let's get Kamala 117 coming out on Raw next week. But yeah, we're told that the stakes for this TV main event cannot be any higher. And so we go to the ring for our TV main event, because you got to give it plenty of time. We're 15 minutes into a 42-minute show without commercials. So you got to give these guys 30 minutes if need be. And when I think of people who need 30 minutes for their match, no doubt in my mind, it is Kareem Muhammad, the Zambui Express with General Skandor Akbar versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Duggan attacked Kareem like he was fighting Glass Joe and was just trying to get done so he could face Von Kaiser next. Akbar interfered, letting Kareem hit one headbutt, but missed the second and the third. Duggan did a backdrop, which was more him throwing Kareem like a sack of shit, because Kareem did not really get up too well for that backdrop. Like, he got up, but he didn't turn. And so Duggan, realizing how bad it looks, he literally just threw Kareem Muhammad, which actually looks so much better than an actual backdrop. And at this point, he threw Kareem out of the ring, and Akbar, who was on the apron, into the ring. Akbar was waving frantically for someone, and eventually, Kamala ran out for the disqualification. Now, what I assumed happened was they went for fire again, because they were holding Duggan, and they're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and I'm like, okay, Bill Watts is going to eventually make it down here again like he did last time. Maybe Bill needs to get a head start on these fucking run-ins. But while we're waiting, what I thought for Bill, the job crew ran in. Like, every person from the babyface side of the locker room ran in at this point, and they all got their asses kicked. Somebody with GH on their tights ran in, got his ass kicked. I don't even know who the hell that was, because, there was no GHs on the rest of the show. But GH got his ass kicked, sure enough. And eventually everyone got tired of Bill eventually making to the ring, so the pushed baby faces made the save. It was like 12 people in the ring. I didn't think there was this many people in the Mid-South territory at this point. But I guess including jobbers, we get 12 baby faces running off Kareem Muhammad and Kamala. I don't want to say tired, but I'm getting a little ready to move on with this Duggan Kamala stuff, because it has been going on for a while, even before the fire. And I don't believe Kareem Muhammad is the right choice anyway, to be going after Duggan instead. I don't know who it would be at this point. And part of the problem is Butch Reed is coming back, and I'm pretty sure he's coming back as a babyface, because again, he's black, so we need to push a top black babyface, and we don't have anyone else in the territory right now. They don't have, this is a lie. I was gonna say they don't have a lot of great top heels, but they do. Just like DiBiase's probably the best heel they have, but he's in a tag with Doc. They got Jake Roberts, but he's in a tag with the ball bearing. Doc could be used as a top heel, but he's also in that same tag team with DiBiase. Because I mean, like, the Nightmare is not a top heel. Like, this Nightmare thing does not last too much longer, and it's like it can't get done soon enough. And no offense to like Eddie Gilbert, who's a great talker, but the Nightmare is just not cutting it. And so right now we're kind of weak on the heel side of things, and we need to liven things up a little bit here, I think. Well, up next we were scheduled to have the tag team champions Dr. Death Steve Williams and Ted DiBiase take on Terry Daniels and Frankie Lane. Trey mentioned this last week that Terry Daniels is no longer Private Terry Daniels, and I didn't notice it, but this week I was specifically looking for it, and sure enough, they still announce him as being from the Cobra Corps, and he still has his yellow t-shirt on like he's had, the past few months ever since he realized that it takes him 3 hours to get undressed in the ring, but they no longer call him Private Terry Daniels. He's just plain Terry Daniels now. And to make things better, he's not even going to get to wrestle. Let's go to the ring where Jake the Snake Roberts and the Barbarian have got in here, and they're confronting the tag team champions.
Hold it right now. I don't know how long I'm going to have to chase you two guys with me and the Barbarian. But all we ever wanted, Ted, was one title shot. Now, right here on television is fine with me. So why don't you just put them up one time and let's see who the best team is.
Give them up, Weasels. Give them up.
You know something, Roberts? I get the impression from listening to you that you think that Doc and I are afraid of you two. Let me tell you something, Jake. We're the Mid-South champions. We don't run from anybody. And I'm getting tired of you running out here whenever you feel like you want to and interfering in our matches and our business. Now, I'll tell you something, Jake. We don't sign the matches. Grizzly Smith, the matchmaker, signs the matches. We are contracted to wrestle these two guys right here today on television. Now, I'll tell you this. If we weren't obligated by contract to wrestle these two guys, we'd give you your title match, Jake. We would be more than happy to teach you two a lesson. But we are contracted to wrestle them.
Hold it just a minute now. You said the only reason keeping you from teaching us a lesson was these two guys?
Exactly. We got a match contract to decide right here.
Are you saying that if they weren't in here, that you would wrestle us?
That's right. As simple as that.
Is that right? That's all they want. That's all they want. This guy here.
Well, now, Teddy, you don't have anybody to wrestle, so you might as well wrestle us. You might as well step on up here, big man.
That's real cute,
Come
Robert.
on, do something.
That's real cute, Robert. You want a title match?
Yeah.
You got it. Grizzly Smith, you come on up here. You want a title match,
That's
Robert?
what I want.
You got it, baby. You got it. Come on up here. I'm going to tell you something, Jake Roberts. Mid-South does not go for you forcing your hand. But if you want to insist, I'll ask Grizzly Smith, and if he'll force your hand for this match, you got it. But that's not the way things work around here, because I've tried it before. They want a title match, Grizzly Smith.
Okay, so fuck it. We're not listening to a fucking word that any child rapist says on this show. So, Jake and the Barbarian want their title shot. Now, the funniest part about this, and I wish Trey was here because I would have been interested to see if he remembered this part. Last week on this show, Ted DiBiase came to the ring and said that he wanted a match with Terry Taylor where the winner gets a shot at the North American title. Even though it was not the scheduled match on the show last week, they made it happen. However, this week, Ted DiBiase's like, oh, nope, we can't just make our own matches. I can just give you a match, Jake the Snake Roberts and the Barbarian. It's up to matchmaker Grizzly Smith. He's the person that makes the matches. I don't make the matches. I would love to wrestle you, but I have a match with Frankie Lane and Terry Daniels. And, Jake and the Barbarian are like, so you're not going to wrestle us because you have a match with Terry Daniels and Frankie Lane. Like, oh yeah, like we'd love to wrestle you. We'd love to put the tag titles on the line against you guys, but we already have a match. Well, the loophole came into effect here, and they beat the snot out of Terry Daniels and Frankie Lane, proving, by the way, that they're not turning babyface. Because babyfaces do not beat the snot out of the jobbers. The babyfaces shake the jobbers' hands, and the jobbers agree to give them their spot. It's not what happened. So, after that happened, a child rapist got in the ring and did book the match, and I had to laugh because Doc is looking at Grizzly. DiBiase is looking at Grizzly. The Barbarian is looking at Grizzly. Jake the Snake Roberts, Grizzly Smith's son, can't even be bothered to look at his dad, even though they've never been father and son on TV. And by the way, for good reason. If you're Jake the Snake Roberts, would you want to look at, Grizzly Smith? So anyway, the match gets booked. Doc and DiBiase defending the tag titles against Jake the Snake Roberts and the Barbarian. And the bell never rang. Instead, Doc and DiBiase walked off and refused to wrestle, which does not count as a submission, I guess, and so we had no match. But however, we're setting up an angle here with two heel teams, which I guess, hey, we don't have a lot of babyface teams in this territory at this point. It's hilarious because we have the opposite issue when it comes to singles top guys and tag top guys. Because again, we mentioned we have no really good singles heels, and we only have one babyface tag team, and that's the Fantastics. So it's like they need to start putting some people together on the other side of the aisle there. But while we're worried about that, we go to our next match, which is formerly being introduced as the Nightmare, but the North American Heavyweight Champion and Hot Stuff requests that he be introduced as the champion with Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert versus Wendell Cooley. Now, we were told that the champion has called a press conference for next week. Now, I hope that's enough time for the press to actually show up, and it's not just, Boyd Pierce interviewing the champion, by the ring with no press there at all. I think Dave was living in Dallas at this point. He could have gotten over to Shreveport and been the media. What about that guy? Oh my God, Buddy Nichols, the guy who made wrestling what it was. Like, why isn't he going to be on the show next week as part of the press conference? Anyway, Cooley went for a middle rope bottom maneuver, but this is where it gets interesting because he slipped, but I don't know what the hell the point of this was going to be because he slipped, but he slipped right into a clothesline from the champion who then pinned him with a pile driver. So it feels like even if he would have done whatever he was going for, he was going to get clotheslined anyway and knocked out and pinned with a pile driver. But that's what happened here. And the champion, I would say, retains his title because the belt wasn't on the line here. But the champion wins again. I had to laugh because, this is the North American title. We mentioned this before. That big-ass North American title that it's clunky as all hell and nobody can wear it. The only person who wore it was Ernie Ladd. And, Ernie Ladd's fucking 6'9" and 300-something pounds. And, it looks right around Ernie Ladd's waist. The champion is the only other person in this territory who's ever worn this damn belt. And again, it is way too big. I gotta say, I prefer when they become the UWF, because the UWF title, it's more appropriately sized. Although it's funny, then they put the belt on One Man Gang. And I bet One Man Gang could wear the North America title, no problem. So, since we were told that the Brick House is coming next week, I guess we have another Brick House in Brown teaming with our old friend Mark Rajan versus the Red Raider and Paul Brown. What is with these wrestling shows and having multiple people in the same match named Brown? Between this and TNA this week, we have 4 Browns in 2 matches. Maybe we can remove one of their last names like TNA did with D'Lo. So we go to the match, and Mark Rajan now has suspenders to hold up his tights for the intro. And Mark Rajan starts the match with Paul. Now I want to point out that me making that bad joke is the most entertaining part of this match. Paul basically had trouble existing in this match. He could not do shit, and I wish Trey would have been seeing this one too. He couldn't do a drop-down spot. You know that spot where you get shot in, the guy drops down, and you jump over him? I can do that. Paul Brown could not do that. And, like, Paul Brown gently steps over and then stops, even though he's supposed to run into a Mark Rajan clothesline, but he stops, so Mark Rajan had to run forward with a clothesline, and then Brickhouse tries to send him into the ropes, except Paul Brown can't do that either, and then Mark Rajan stiffs him to hell with the drop kick for the pin. Like, I'm not for stiffing guys, but he fucking deserved this shit. That was some bad shit right there, ladies and gentlemen. You know, between this and Chase Stevens landing and tripping over his own 2 feet tomorrow in TNA, it's quite the week here for pro wrestlers and tag matches. Al Perez versus Pat Rose. The most entertaining part of this match was Boyd announcing Pat Rose as 226.25 pounds, and Rose just standing on the side giving him this total "what the fuck are you talking about" look. The whole match, hey, last week Al Perez's match went like 10 seconds. He beat Tommy Pritchard with a bridging German suplex. This week it went slightly longer. Rose teased a handshake and then tried to kick Perez, so Perez blocked it and then won with the bridging German suplex. You know, if all of Al Perez's matches went 20 seconds, I could see why Gary Hart was so infatuated with him. The problem is Al Perez is going to have to wrestle longer than 20 seconds. And when he does, that's when people wonder what the hell is wrong with Gary Hart. Because of all the people Gary Hart has championed, you know, there's always like, you could see why. Like even someone like Kabuki. Like Kabuki, like, you know, we'll get to him here in a little bit. You know, Kabuki may not be the greatest wrestler of all time, but he's a fun character. No doubt. And, you know, Gary Hart's always been that person behind like some random people, and it's worked. Al Perez is one. I don't know what the hell Gary Hart was seeing in Al Perez. Like, you know. So anyway, after that match, we have 6 minutes left in the show. Seems like a perfect time for that match that was announced at the beginning of the show with the Fantastics versus Tommy Pritchard and Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. But instead, we go to JR and Joel, and they do a bit of a recap at first. Like, okay, whatever, let's get going, because the Fantastics have to come out here and be sexually assaulted by, you know, all the women in the Irish McNeil Boys Center, Irish McNeil Boys Club, excuse me. But it never happens, because instead of going to a match, we go to a different Fantastics music video. And I'll say this, at least it was a new Fantastics music video. This video included them dancing at the pool in their trunks and romantically sharing wine on the beach. You know, not that there's anything wrong with that, but maybe it's not all the girls of Mid-South that should be flocking to Fantastics. And then the show ended with them announcing that next week we're going to have a special visit with country music star Jerry Reed. At this point, I literally rewound to the start of the show to confirm that they did announce the Fantastics versus Tommy Pritchard and Eddie Gilbert for this week. And they did. The match just didn't happen. So maybe it'll happen next week. I guess we'll see. But that was Mid-South. It was certainly, you know, all things considered, I'd say a good show. It set up, you know, what could be a really good tag feud. Because, you know, you get DiBiase and Jake cutting promos on one another. And then you have Doc and the Barbarian just being hosses, you know, and having a meat match, a 1985 meat match. You know, that could be a hell of a program here on Mid-South Wrestling. And maybe when the champion does his press conference next week, he'll get some new challengers here going. Because who the hell's he been feuding with? Like, he's really not feuding with anybody. Because who did he take the belt from? Yeah, he took the belt from Taylor, and then Taylor keeps wanting a title shot, but he keeps being denied it. And then Taylor lost this week to fucking Dutch Mantel. It's like, I guess I should have looked. Is Terry Taylor's way out of the territory, maybe? Like, I know he's going to be Brock at the end of the year because he's on Starrcade. But maybe Terry Taylor is on the way out. But hey, while I'm looking that up, let's go to the intro of this week's episode of World Class Championship Wrestling with good old Bill Mercer.
World Class Championship Wrestling from the famed Sportatorium, the most famous wrestling arena in the world, right here in downtown Dallas, Texas. World Class Championship Wrestling, seen around the world and across the United States. I'm Bill Mercer. It's great to have you with us right here from Dallas. And you're going to see some of the greatest bouts ever filmed, ever televised. It's going to be the main event of the great Kabuki and gentleman Chris Adams, the thrust kick and the super kick. And one of the most exciting, one of the most tumultuous bouts ever taped in Kerry and Kevin Von Erich against Gino Hernandez and Chris Adams. And a lot more right here on World Class Championship Wrestling. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this.
Okay, so actually, that was a loser leaves town match. Terry Taylor is out of the territory. So he is on his way to Mid-Atlantic. But the funny thing is, and I think a lot of people listening to this know this, he's not gone for very long. Him and Dusty get along like oil and water. He is actually back in the territory on Christmas night. So in 4 months, or 5 months, excuse me, Terry Taylor's already back in Mid-South. And maybe there might be a small gap in here, but I don't think he's here till the bitter end. Yes, so he's here, and yeah, because he's on that Starrcade with the TV title where they unify it with whochamacallit, with Nikita Koloff. So yeah. So yeah, Terry Taylor's here till the end, and then he tries going back to Crockett because Crockett, of course, buys the UWF, and then he just dumps the UWF at the end of '87, and Taylor doesn't last long and ends up in the WWF as the Red Rooster. I don't know. Like, I don't know why Terry Taylor and Dusty Rhodes hated each other. They just did. I have my questions in my head as to where Terry Taylor could have been if he didn't have his problems with Dusty Rhodes. And I think one of the problems, and people don't really talk about this now, but it was certainly a thing like back in the day. And I know you're not allowed to speak bad about people who, had bad things happen to them, but there was a lot of internal resentment against Magnum TA because he was Dusty's boy. And there was a lot of people who would argue that they were better. And I'm sure Terry Taylor was probably one of them, that he felt that he was better than, Magnum TA, but Magnum was getting the push and he wasn't. And Magnum was definitely Dusty's boy. So in many ways, the UWF really was the highlight of Terry Taylor's career, at least as an in-ring career. Like he's had a long career as a trainer and an agent, and he worked in creative a bit, but it's like on camera in the ring, like, I know he had a decent run as Terrence Taylor in 91, 92 in the York Foundation, but at that point, it's still right after the Red Rooster. How hard can we really push this guy kind of thing? But so anyway, we go to World Class Championship Wrestling. You just heard the intro. Some of the greatest bouts ever taped and televised, which is quite the pronouncement, I must say. And we're going to have Super Kick versus Thrust Kick in the main event. It's Chris Adams versus Great Kabuki. And in case that's not enough Chris Adams in your life, we're also going to get a tape from Fort Worth with Kerry and Kevin versus Gino and Chris. Double, you're Chris Adams. Double your enjoyment, for no single guy doesn't freshen your screen like gentlemen, yeah, gentlemen, Chris said Ed. Yeah, everybody who survived listening to the show after the opening of the show when I did the Somebody Called 911 song, they just turned it off now. So, this is why this show doesn't get listens. I can't imagine why. You would think car crash podcasting, if nothing else, would be a must listen to, but apparently we are not crashing our cars in the right way for the listeners. Oh well. So we go to the opener, and it's the Fantastics versus the Heartthrob of New Jersey, Jack Victory, and Rip Oliver. That's how they introduced the man. The Heartthrob of New Jersey, Jack Victory. Now, I believe we already knew this, but they did tell us here the Fantastics have lost the American Tag Team titles to Adams and Gino. And, hey, speaking of people we haven't seen in a while, David Manning Von Erich is back, and he is the referee here. Now, this match was fucking long, but that's not to say there weren't things to note about it. As the match got going, Bill Mercer, it almost becomes Bill Watts. Let's go to Bill Mercer with some interesting comments that he randomly makes at the beginning of this match.
Cities over on the other side of the world is New York City. Yes, sir, the Big Apple. And Madison Square Garden and their cable. And that's where we're seen. The world-class championship wrestling. And a letter from old friend in New York, Jimmy Dolan. Watches us on New York City, Madison Square Garden cable. We hope you do, wherever you may be. The Garden. Almost as famous as the Sportatorium. Almost.
You gotta love it. It's like, taking pot shots at New York. The Garden is almost as famous as the Sportatorium. And for those who don't know, and I don't know if it's still a thing, but there used to be a Madison Square Garden cable network, and shockingly enough, it aired a lot of shows from Madison Square Garden, like Knicks games, Rangers games, etc. And of course, it would also air WWF shows on the MSG network. And I think it's interesting. I mean, I'm sure this is true, but I think it's interesting that, World Class would air on that network, because you would think, the MSG cable network would be a little bit more, exclusive to Vinnie Mac. But also the fact that, they really did just mostly air shows in the New York market. So it's weird that, they would air a wrestling show from Dallas for more than one reason. I did not catch name. I wrote down he said Jimmy Golden, but I don't think that's what he said. But Jimmy Golden, of course, is also known as Bunkhouse Buck. And for those longtime listeners of the Smoky Mountain Show, he was in the first, 70 or so episodes of Smoky Mountain. Bobby Fulton, this was not really picked up well, and I don't think Mercer really noticed. But Bobby Fulton did a baseball slide out of the ring and accidentally gave the boom mic guy a drop kick. A baseball slide drop kick. Because he had the boom mic guy there. And because, hey, World Class, their production was always great. And that was one of the things that they did. One of the innovations they had was they had the boom mic operator holding the microphone to pick up the sounds and the noises of the ring better. And Bobby Fulton accidentally gave him a baseball slide drop kick. And he got a boom right down as he took a bump on the ground. Now he did get up, and Fulton, shook his hand and gave him a hug before going on to continue. Now, this was a competently wrestled tag team match. The problem was it just went on for fucking ever. It is important to remember, this show is 45 minutes without commercials. This is not Raw or SmackDown that goes 3 hours. It's not Dynamite, which goes close to 2.5 hours. This is a 1 hour show minus commercials. And this match went about 15 minutes. It took up 1/3 of the post-commercial television time. And it's not saying this is a bad match, but like there's a reason why Mid-South is a much more exciting to watch show, because it's like they don't, for better or worse, they don't give the guys the time to have these long matches. They give them just enough time to have, a match on TV that's going to get your attention span. And like the longest match typically goes around 5 to 6 minutes, and they get out and they leave you wanting more. And that's the one thing with World Class is you're never left wanting more when watching World Class. Even the booking where there's always a DQ, there's always a count out in the main event, there's always a run in, and in theory it makes you want to watch more. It's like, why? All this does is that means that next week there's now going to be another match that's going to be just as long. And then to make it even worse, like it was 15 minutes, and the finish was Rip Oliver throwing Bobby Fulton over the top rope for the disqualification. Fuck. And to make it even better, this is the Fantastic Swan Song. They've talked about this on Mid-South, that they've given up all their commitments in Dallas and are moving to, the Mid-South territory. That is the case. This is it. This is their last match, and they didn't even lose. They didn't even lose by DQ. They won. They won. Oh my God. It's like, I don't know. If I'm them, I am so not crying about heading over to Dallas instead of being here going over to Mid-South than being stuck here in Dallas. Because like these fucking TV matches just take forever, and at least we know for a fact that the ladies over in Mid-South, appreciate the Fantastics. We were then sent to what was called a warm and wonderful moment for the Von Erichs, because basically the Von Erichs and Fritz donated $24,000 to the Dallas Society for Crippled Children to build a playground for handicapped children. And here's the thing, that is a super nice gesture. And like legitimately, hats off. They're doing good things in the community. They're not just taking, they're giving. And they specifically said this was $24,000 that they made at the David Von Erich Memorial Parade of Champions at Texas Stadium. And so we always talk about like how, like sometimes you wonder how these people continue to support them. They continue to support them because they're good people. Like they're, to the public, they're good people. And I'm not saying they're bad people behind the scenes, but we all know all the issues that the Von Erichs had. But it's like, this is part of why they love them. It's like they not just took they didn't just take the fans' money and pocket it. They took the fans' money, they pocketed it, most of it, but then they took $24,000 of it and they used it to build a park for handicapped children. I don't think you need to say anything more. And I did have a timestamp ready to go because I figured, okay, they're going to, because they showed the dedication and we're going to have an interview there. And I'm like, oh, Fritz is there, Kevin, Carrie, Mike is there. They're going to interview them. But no, they interviewed a young lady with the Dallas Home for Crippled Children, the Dallas Society, pardon me, for Crippled Children. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and play it. It was basically, she was grateful that, the Von Erichs donated this money to them, and it's going to be called the David Von Erich Playground for Handicapped Children. So that was nice, and it was a nice breakup in the show. Now from here we go to Fort Worth for Carrie and Kevin versus Chris and Gino. This was the July 4th Star Wars show, and I thought this was the match, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, and they'll tell us next week, but I thought this was the match where if the Von Erichs won, then they got to smash Gino's car. It's a payback for, the Parade of Champions where Gino smashed Kevin's car. Well, that's not what happened here. Now, this match was more exciting than the opener. Not that there's anything revolutionary about that. A four-way broke out, and Kevin, oh my God. David Manning Von Erich's the referee. Cactus Jack, Mick Foley, right now is training with Dominic DeNucci to become a pro wrestler. He is a year away from having his first match. He's a year and a couple months away from having that or having his second match where he's on the WWF TV taping in either Hartford or Providence, the one against the British Bulldogs. So, again, this is before Mick Foley ever dreamed of losing his ear in Germany. So, Kevin Irish whips Gino into David Manning, and David Manning does the Cactus Jack Hangman in the ropes. The one where Cactus was hanging by his neck in the ropes and wrenched his head out and lost an ear. David Manning was in that. And we rip on drunk Mark Lawrence a lot, and we rip on David Manning Von Erich a lot. Drunk Mark Lawrence reacted exactly the way you'd expect someone to react in a situation like this. Drunk Mark Lawrence freaked out. And he's right there because he's doing commentary from ringside, and David is hung up right in front of him. He gets up, drops the microphone, and Ricky Hazard comes out, and the two of them manage to get David Manning Von Erich out. And I'll be honest, I was not expecting that. Gino pinned Kerry after a super kick. Kevin had been blinded by powder before the finish. And actually, when Chris hit Kerry with the super kick and Gino covered him, Chris went over and grabbed Ricky Hazard and basically carried him over to make the cover because he was checking on good old David Manning Von Erich. So yeah, Chris and Gino pick up the win over Kerry and Kevin at the July 4th Star Wars show. We still have months and months of this program to go. Because I always thought that, the blow-off was the hair match in October at not Texas Stadium, but the Cotton Bowl when they do that show again. But that is not the blow-off to the feud. The blow-off is like Christmas, I think. And that's when the blinding angle happens, for those who remember that. Next week, they tell us it's going to be Kevin Von Erich versus Chris Adams. And then we go to good old Gary Hart. Uncle Gary is at ringside with the one-man gang and killer Tim Brooks.
A one-man gang and killer Tim Brooks. I appreciate on the interview that you realized I had matriculated.
You're a very brilliant man, and that's why you're going to appreciate this so much, Bill.
I want to hear this. I think it is amazing.
Ever since the Texas Stadium, when I was set down before 40,000 people and humiliated by you, Fritz Von Erich, I haven't forgotten. I've taken my time, and I have built the greatest team in professional wrestling today. The meanest team, the roughest team, and the team that can take the belts. And when I say the belts, the only thing that's important to me is the World Six-Man Tag Team, the most prestigious title in wrestling. And I am going to see to it with the one-man gang at 486 pounds, Tim Brooks at 255 pounds, and Mark Lewin,
the Maniac,
at 260. That's 1,001 pounds coming after you, Von Erichs.
Hey, you make sure the Maniac gets here, okay, Slick? That's your job. You get the Maniac here, okay? Because I know we're going to win the World Six-Man titles. There's no doubt in my mind, your mind, his mind. And Uncle Killer, step in here.
1,001 pounds. This is going to be the greatest six-man tag match. It's going to be the greatest in the world. You understand that, Hart? We're going to win that six-man championship tag title. I'm telling you that right now. And Coach Fritz, I hope you make the mistake of putting that Mike Von Erich back in a little bit early, because I'm going to break and reset that shoulder.
All right, gentlemen, Mark Lewin's coming back. 1,001 pounds. And we'll be right back with more world-class championship. We'll do that on wrestling.
So Mark Lewin is on his way in to win the six-man tag titles with the one-man gang and Killer Tim Brooks. This was obviously not as great as Killer Tim Brooks' debut promo last month. And I mean, you can't have a great Killer Tim Brooks promo every month. It won't, or every week. It won't be a great Killer Tim Brooks promo anymore. A memorable Killer Tim Brooks promo anyway. But yeah, 1,001 pounds. I keep repeating that. That's the number of the three men put together here. And at first, I was kind of scoffing at the one-man gang of 480 something pounds, but no, he looks to be in that 5 bills range. And he does lose some weight when he does go to the WWF, believe it or not. But yeah, he was looking every bit of 486 here. Main event time: Great Kabuki with Sunshine versus Chris Adams. We are told that in slang terms, Kabuki is wearing black pajamas, but those are his fighting tongs, we're told. Adams did a version of the sharpshooter. This was another long match. We basically had 2 matches this week because the Von Erichs, Chris and Gino match was like the last couple minutes of the match. But we had 2 matches on the show, and they were both long. Adams goes to grab a chair. Sunshine fights it away from him, and Kabuki wins with a schoolboy. Yes, they built up this match for like 2 weeks. Chris Adams' super kick, Kabuki's thrust kick. Which is better? He won with a schoolboy. After the match, Adams shoved Sunshine down, who came out of her heels. So Kabuki tripped him up and slammed him knees first into the post until Bronco Lubitsch pulled Adams back. I know this is my fault, but how fucking long are we going to be watching this shit for? I swear to you, I don't hate myself. I love me. I don't know why the hell I'm forcing myself to watch World Class. But yeah, that was World Class. I'm sorry, it was a hard show to get through, ladies and gentlemen. A hard show to get through. So let me see. Further details emerged on Sinner and Saint's departure from TNA. This is by Vince Verhey, courtesy of a report at Fightful Select. Sinner and Saint wanted out. And I mean, I said this, like I got nothing against them. I'm sure if in a better world, they could have done something, have had a better chance. But in all honesty, it's like they really weren't doing anything. They were not going to break into the echelon of TNA tag teams. Like, more or less, like their potential spot got taken by the Great Hands. And even then, like, that's not really much of a spot. Jason Hotch and John Schuyler. Like, best case, they would have been the 4th team in the ladder match at Slammiversary that the Hardys won. But the thing is, it's like they're really not up there. Like TNA, they don't have a lot of great teams, but it's like they can put together 5 or 6 teams that are more name-worthy than Sinner and Saint. So you know what? Maybe it's best that they go do their own thing somewhere else right now. There are other wrestling companies out there. We talk about it all the time. It's like, again, if TNA goes out of business tomorrow, there are a billion wrestling companies around, and there will be a new wrestling company that pops up on Thursday that would take a lot of the spots for those guys. But yeah, it's like I guess I'm not really, crying about it. I know some people are a little perturbed by it, but to me, it's whatever. Like like you can't even say, oh well, TNA is focusing on NXT people. Like, aren't they only putting NXT people at this point? Like, Ariana and her boyfriend. But it's whatever. Let's see. Going through. Apparently, Jacob Fatu is having his first ever match on Raw tonight, which just seems wrong. But I'm not going to, argue if somebody says that. Let's see here. Downhausen has apparently showed up with a bag of money on Raw. Why? And apparently Danhausen is going to wrestle Dominic Mysterio at SummerSlam. I bet that'll get those tickets selling. Immediately, since we recorded the show yesterday, that'll air tomorrow, where we talk about how SummerSlam only is doing about 23,000 seats. They sold about 4,000, 5,000 seats for each night. So they're now closer to 30,000. So good for them. Still, I don't want to say who cares, but it's still, a 60,000 seat building. And again, like I said, I'm sure the people who complain and moan and laugh when AEW does 30,000 seats or 30,000 at Wembley Stadium, they're not gonna, bat an eye, for SummerSlam and vice versa. It's kind of whatever here. I'm just kind of scrolling through Twitter to see if there's anything noteworthy to mention. And from what I can see, not really. Yeah, so hey, what the hell? Like I said, we don't go 2 hours because I'm here by myself. And I think it started at like 9:12 p.m. Yeah, 9:12 p.m. So we're going to end this at about 10:12 p.m. So we're going to call it now. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back tomorrow with TNA, Thursday with Smoky Mountain, Friday with Impact, maybe by myself half the week, but hey, those are the breaks sometimes. So thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you again